Good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the ninth webinar in our series, Challenging the Status Quo, Taking Libraries into the Future, designed exclusively for libraries and information professionals. In today's session, our panelists will delve into topics of bibliodiversity from national, international, and institutional perspectives. With the open access movement highlighting the need to preserve and promote diverse scholarly research, bibliodiversity has become crucial, particularly for countries with rich cultural heritage and limited publishing resources. As funding decreases and cost per use models dominate, librarians play a key role in helping scholars secure the necessary support. So today, our expert speakers explore the challenges and opportunities in fostering bibliodiversity across different levels. So without further ado, I'll pass over to our moderators, Linda Bennett and Anika Bennett from GoLeaf. Linda and Anika, please introduce our esteemed speakers. As always, you're muted during the webinar, but please add your questions, opinions, and ideas into the chat. Right, Linda, over to you.
Thank you very much for that, Lavinia. And just to say, Anika is here to help to field your questions. We'll take most of the questions at the end. I may just take one or two after each session. So welcome everybody, and as I'm sure you all know, today is World Book Day, which is a very fitting occasion for the first webinar of this year. And we are very privileged not only to have three distinguished speakers, but three speakers from different continents. So we have Mimi from the USA, we have Alexandra from Serbia, and we have Sarah from Uganda. And I don't think we've ever covered three continents in the same webinar before. And also Lavinia, who just introduced us, is based in Singapore. So it's probably the most cosmopolitan webinar we've ever had. I'd like to thank Lavinia, because it is 10 o'clock in Singapore at the moment, for stepping into the breach, because our usual facilitator from De Gruyter, Andrea, is unwell at the moment. And I'm sure those of you who attend regularly would like to send Andrea your best wishes. So without more ado, I'm going to ask Mimi Coulter, who is currently the chair of the Academic and Research Libraries Standing Committee for the International Federation of Library Associations, that's IFLA, as we all know, and coordinates programs of research and programs in support of research libraries globally. She's also the Vice Provost and University Librarian for Washington University in St. Louis. So Mimi, would you like to start with your presentation, please? Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Can you see my screen? Did I do that right? Okay, very good. Yeah. So hello, as you have just heard, I'm Mimi Coulter, and I am both the Vice Provost and University Librarian at Washington University in St. Louis, and also the current chair of the IFLA Academic and Research Libraries Committee. And I'm trying to bring both perspectives to the conversation as I present today. So, hold on. There we go. I'm going to start with a sort of more personal perspective, as I was, sort of getting started and thinking about thinking about what to include in my presentation today. I did what so many of us now do, and I turned to ChatGPT for some suggestions and starting points and topics. And I thought I would start with a definition, just asking for a definition. And I've learned to be a little bit skeptical of ChatGPT, so I asked it to cite sources in addition to providing me with a definition. And what you see here, I'm not going to read it. I know you can all see it, but what you see here is the definition that it gave me, and it's not a terrible definition. It's not a great definition either, and I will say that a quick Google search was actually more effective in finding a definition. But then the interesting thing was I asked it to cite sources, and the sources the ChatGPT gave me are actually not correct. The links that it's provided don't actually link to anything with the title that's there. If you sort of dig through it, they're both of those citations are pointing back to it seemed to be pointing back to uh, this this International Declaration of Independent Publishers focused on bibliodiversity. And that whole process of just working through, sort of thinking about ChatGPT, how we use it these days, and how it relates back to the diversity of the materials that ChatGPT is learning from and looking at was really just insightful to me, and really got me thinking about the importance of this concept of bibliodiversity as we think not just about what we're using for our own reference, but what we're using to train these tools and these tools that are becoming so much more ingrained into our work. So here is what I think is a much more elegant definition of bibliodiversity. This is the one from the International Independent Publishers, much more nuanced and much more inspiring. The complex self-sustaining system of storytelling, writing, publishing, and other kinds of production of oral and written literature is really good. Um, I really, this citation is actually valid. It's actually where I got that slide, and it's the one that I worked with as I was thinking more about what my presentation was going to be today. But my focus, as you've heard, is in the academic sphere, and so my focus on bibliodiversity is really primarily in the area of scholarly communications. And I was sort of looking for resources and sort of deepening my understanding of what the impact, the impact and meaning of bibliodiversity within scholarly communications. Again, another resource that I recommend, the Introduction to Bibliodiversity in Scholarly Communications, with the citation there. But there's two main points of that this resource calls out around the role of scholarly communication. First of all, that it emphasizes the diversification of voices, languaging, funding models, which I think is a really important piece. Acts of research, which is definitely important, and publishing formats that are considered scholarly communications. And it lowers barriers to participating in the scholarly communication conversation, really promoting equity, which is an important issue, and the ways that we communicate knowledge. So in my role as, I'm gonna move forward. Actually, I'm going to move forward to my next slide and talk about my role as a university librarian. Those concepts and those impacts around scholarly communications comes up very clearly in our collection development policy. Materials type is a really critical way in which that question of what qualifies as scholarly communications and what therefore qualifies as what we need to be collecting and managing and archiving within and making accessible within the university libraries is an ongoing challenge. And this and comes back to this question of how you make ends meet, because we are more and more looking to data, particularly as a collection type. So and that puts pressure on our capacity to purchase other media types, where we've got more and more activity also curating internal data. So sort of data storage and data management becomes a challenge. The line between special collections and general collections is something that we see blurring more and more, and we're sort of managing collections writ large more actively. There's much more pressure on us to think about media. We're certainly thinking about things like digital humanities resources, where publications are not show. We've long since moved past the traditional journal and monograph as the modes in which we are collecting, but how we manage those challenges is an ongoing source of conversation. Linguistic representation was called out there, and that is a place where we have some real challenges, particularly in the STEM areas. We do have our area studies where we're actively collecting in specified languages, but when we think about STEM in particular and in the sciences, we don't have a good history and don't have a good record of collecting in languages outside of English. And so how we how we are really thinking holistically about that is an ongoing challenge. We do spend a lot of time as we're building our collection development policy thinking about the historic collection practices, and linguistic is a piece of this, but the big example here is our sort of modern literature collection and what we have historically collected, which is very much very much white, very much male, very much North American centric, and really trying to broaden what we are collecting and holding in modern literature has been an active area of work for us. And then, of course, the ways we think about supporting alternative publishing models is a huge piece of this. So we are managing an institutional repository and thinking about other tools to support non-traditional publication. We're managing open educational resources. We're engaging in data curation, but we're also thinking about our contracts and agreements with traditional publishers. The impact of the transformational agreement and the role that things like big deals play in managing our budget is an ongoing challenge. So then that's my day job. My role in IFLA and ARL, it gives me a much broader perspective and certainly impacts the way I think about, especially things like the lack of language diversity in our local collections. But so one of the exercises that we go through annually within the IFLA, the Academic and Research Libraries group, is a survey of our committee members to understand local trends, local and regional trends. And I just wanted to call out this is the list here on the right. You'll see the list of the trends that we called out for 2024. And there's a lot of callback and relationship, to my mind, with these questions of bibliodiversity and how we're managing it. Open access and open science was top of the list and was represented in every region that is represented on our committee. That is a real push to reduce barriers to information. It's all about promoting equity in publishing. It's about increasing the visibility of research outputs, and that question of how we work with open access materials and we make them accessible and we preserve them there's a lot of really interesting interplay there between the traditional publishing and libraries. That connects back to infrastructure and resource management. There's a lot of trends there focusing on how we are enhancing and managing electronic resources. There's a lot of questions around electronic infrastructure, particularly related to open science, and the ways that folks are contracting for and accessing collections and open science publications and materials. Collaboration and partnerships came out as a recurring trend amongst multiple countries. So the way we work with resource sharing consortia, which is one approach to addressing the fiscal challenges that libraries are facing in terms of managing and working with collections, is working to spread the burden. And then through all of that, the idea of decolonization, indigenization. I have a hard time pronouncing that word, but the ways that the types of things, the materials that we are collecting, and particularly being thoughtful about being inclusive in the way we are collecting, is of course tying back to all those different trends. So I'm seeing all of that. Those trends are definitely impacting the work that I'm doing at the more local level. And I think I'm gonna stop there. I just kind of wanted to talk about the trends and let you see what I am, what what we're seeing and what we're wrestling with, and I think we can talk more when we get to questions. I may stop sharing my screen.
Huge thanks for that introduction, Mimi. That was great. We aren't going to take, I don't want to take that question on trends yet because it's a massive question which I'll ask you all to address at the end. But if anybody has a quick question they'd like to ask now, please do so. Otherwise, we'll move straight on to Alexandra. So has anybody got a quick question? I have several questions, but none of them is quick.
So we'll have time at the end. That's good.
Yes, thank you. So now I'd like to introduce Alexandra Trochovac, I think is the right way of saying your name. Forgive me if I got it wrong, Alexandra, who is the chief cataloger, editor, and the digital library consultant at Belgrade University, and has done so many things since she qualified as a librarian that I can't possibly read them all out. But welcome, Alexandra, and I know that as Mimi and Sarah have both worked a great deal with IFLA, you have worked a great deal with LIBA, which of course is another worldwide librarians organisation. So thank you very much for agreeing to speak to us, and would you like to start your presentation now?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexandra Tritovac, and I'm library advisor in University Library Belgrade. And I'm so grateful you, Linda and Anika, to invite me today. And we can jump on the next slide. The content of today's lecture related to establishment of National Open Science Platform in Serbia, then to establish eNauka or e-science portal, bibliodiversity and scientific publishing in Serbia, some words about the role of librarians in this situation, and state in University of Library Svetozar Marković regarding open access and open science. Next slide, please. Just to provide a short historical overview, 2003, we had International Open Access Workshop in Belgrade. It was first international workshop. 2005, Open Access Citation Index Seminar, also in Belgrade. And that result, 2005, with Open Access Journals portal at the National Library of Serbia with digital object identifiers to journal articles. Everything together bring us to 2012, an open access repository at the University in Serbia, Belgrade, Niš, and Kragujevac, with PhD dissertation repositories, and our first open access week. Please, next slide. Open access in Serbia, based on this initial positive experience, we emerged the Open Access Initiative from 2012 and 2017. Next slide, please. Main activities were promoting open access in scholarly publishing, organizing workshops and educational events, supporting the development of local scientific journals and repositories. The aim was to increase the visibility and accessibility of scholarly works, as well as to improve open access practices in Serbia. Then we are here, the impact on bibliodiversity as it promotes the accessibility and diversity of research papers. Next slide. We are going, slide before. We are going to National Open Science Platform in Serbia. Based on our experience with repository, the National Repository of Doctoral Dissertation in Serbia, NARDOS, is established 2014. Then July 2018, the Serbian government adopted a national open science policy and made an open science platform. Many institutions all state universities, several private universities, and many private faculties support this initiative and makes their own policies and platforms and regulation regarding open science. We are developed this platform and updating, and today, from December 2024, we have the Open Science Platform 2.0. Next slide. With 5 goals, this Open Science Platform 2.0 has 5 goals: open access to scientific literature, availability of research data, open and transparent access to research infrastructure, transparency in scientific communication and methodologies, and development of digital infrastructure and competencies. We are very proud of our new platform, and through next platform we will include citizen science and open educational resources. Next slide, please. Before everything, we made e-Nauka or e-Science Portal 2023. This is Register of Researchers and Register of Scientific Research Organization in the Republic of Serbia. It is aggregator of metadata about more than 20,000 researchers, more than 200 scientific organizations, and results of scientific work of our researchers. It was huge work, but we are very proud and very and this is important step towards raising awareness of open science and developing bibliodiversity in the Serbian scientific and library community. We collect and aggregated metadata from different sources, from ORCID profiles from institutional repositories. Now we have about 120 institutional repositories, then from integrated library system COBIS, and base our or Serbians in Web of Science. Aggregation of metadata is very important because of persistent identifiers also. We are include DOI, ORCID, ISSN, and ISBN for obligatory data. Next slide, please. Bibliodiversity and scientific publishing. We are speaking about that. We have to mention current state of bibliodiversity and scholarly publishing in Serbia. We have now more than 10 years in open access experience, but diversity of publishers, we have diversity of publishers. There is university, faculties, institutes, libraries, professional societies, and independent publishers. Then we have specification about language, because due internationalization, English is a very preferable language, but many researchers publish in Serbian, in Cyrillic script, and also we have many journals in languages of our minority. And everything together is lead us to rich bibliodiversity in our country. Publishing models now are from traditional subscription, institutional support to the also many journals in open access indexed in a directory of open access journals. Their number is growing day by day. But funding, most journals rely on the Ministry of Science and project-based funding. It is a very big problem in Serbia. Funding abroad also, it is not easy thing. Next slide. Key barriers. I mentioned financial instability of publishers, quality and professionalization of publishing. Many journals do not have sufficient technical and editorial capacity to improve quality and visibility. Then insufficient infrastructure for digital publishing. Some journals still do not have well-developed systems for online publishing, and limited access to international funds and collaboration. They have to write the projects and be member of many institutional association abroad. Next slide. Please. One of solution is open journal system. Now in Serbia we have about 250 scientific journals use the open journal system platform for all online publishing. To improve the application of open journal system, national and regional workshops and training sessions are organized. The last one was 2024 for any country in our region of Southeast Europe. Key benefit is integrating Serbian journals and Serbian scientific work into international scientific networks. Next slide, please. We have one possibility. This is a model of Serbian open access publishing is index or Serbian citation index. It is a bibliographic database, national citation index, and open access repository in the same time. Here is today 307 journals indexed, and function of this open access publishing is indexing and visibility. It is main quality, then support open access, but promote also local language publishing side by publishing in English language. Next slide. Everything goes to that we now have 213 indexed journals in directory of open access journals. 185 indexed journals are without fees, and most of them are under CC license. It is great it is great success for our scientific community, and because we have now growing number of journals in this system. Next, please. Librarians in Serbia play a key role to help not only researchers and publishers, but librarians also, and editorials to publish in open access. Next slide. These activities of librarians are implementing open access supporting scholarly publishing, as well as development of the National Open Science Platform. And those activities are a development and implementation of institutional repositories, including implementation of publishing software solutions and establishing repositories, then education and support for researchers and librarians through training and workshops, then the participation in the development of open science policies, metadata management in the system, e-science, as well as institutional repository, and very important is promotion of open science, advocacy and implementation of those principles in many institutions and publishers. Next, please. I'm coming from University Library Svetozar Marković. University of Belgrade is the biggest university in Serbia with 31 faculties and about 70,000 students. We are a main library for the more than 250 libraries, researcher and faculty libraries, and we are very proud to become an information center with strong focus on digitization and content accessibility. Next slide. The University Library, next slide please. The University Library Svetozar Marković play a key role in scientific ecosystem because we are the biggest scientific library, and we promote bibliodiversity, open access, and open science strongly. Regarding management and development of open repository, we make a digitization and democratization of knowledge with more than 300,000 pages digitized and searchable in full text in our digital library. Then developing, maintaining, and coordinating the federal repository in the University of Belgrade, University of Niš, Kragujevac, and Novi Pazar, as well as several faculty libraries, and actively contributing to the e-science system. Then we, in regarding education on open science and open access, make workshop seminars and training. Our institution, our colleague Dragan Stolic organize seminars for the young researchers and PhD candidates about open science and open access and copyright. Then we participate in connecting Serbia with the European Open Science Cloud. The representative of Serbia for the European Open Science Cloud is our colleague Vasilij Milnovic from this library. Then our librarians involved in Platform for Open Science, National Platform for Open Science. Regarding data validation and standardization, we are strongly involved in data quality with e-science system, then assist scientists, researchers, and institutions in correctly entering and updating metadata. And the newest is from 2024, we have one team who make a final validation of metadata set for conference proceedings and scientific monographs. That metadata set is obligatory and prescribed by Ministry of Science, and we make a correction if they are needed in the monographs, and it is very, very important for our scientific workers. Next, please. Our projection to overcome the barriers is regarding financial sustainability, the creation of a national fund to support open access publishing. Money is very important everywhere. Then encouraging institutions and publishers to be included. Then strengthening professionalization and visibility through training editors and publishers, also librarians, increasing the number of journals in international databases. Improving infrastructure for open access publishing, support for implementing open journal system, and national repositories for publishing open access monographs. Then international cooperation and open science ecosystem for our researchers and our publishers, connection with international initiatives, and participation in European Union projects. Next slide. We take barriers very seriously, but also we think that Serbia made a lot of things regarding open access, open science in bibliodiversity, and I'm thinking that this mission is possible in our country, and that we can successfully contribute to the global scientific community. Thank you for your attention, and thank you, my colleague Milica Ševkušić, that recommended me for this webinar. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Anika.
And huge thanks to you, Alexandra. That was wonderful. Has anybody got a question? I can't see any questions. May I just ask you, this fund that's set up to help open access publishers, can other small publishers who operate different business models get financial support, or is it purely for open access publishing?
We have a support of Ministry of Science for some journals or project of Ministry of Science, Ministry of Culture to public open access. Okay, it's open access, but some financial support exists. It is not only without any money, but the fund can be huge.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, don't go because we'll have the discussion at the end, but now I'd like to welcome Dr. Sarah Kadu, who is Senior Lecturer and Dean of the East African School of Library and Information Science at Makerere University, and is also the immediate past chair of the IFLA Sub-Saharan Africa Regional Division, which has an acronym which is almost as long as it is itself. So welcome, Sarah, and thank you very much for taking part in this. Would you like to start your presentation now?
Thank you so much. I'm trying to see what is not happening here. Let's see.
If you would, if you
Maybe
would like,
someone would like to. Please do. Please. It's okay.
sorry, there is a problem. It doesn't share. Just 1 second.
Oh, it looks like it's coming, but it's coming differently. Would you like to give me a go ahead? How does it? Or maybe I stop it a little bit.
Sorry, I've muted myself, Sarah. We can see the slides now. Thank you.
Oh, you did. Okay. Let
Yeah,
me
we
try
can see
one
them now.
more
Thank you.
time.
I think Annika's put them up for you now. So
Okay.
you'll need to ask her to move to the next one. Thank you.
Are you able to see the slides? Because on
Yes,
my side, I can't see them.
we can see the slides. Thank you. We've got the
Oh,
slide about you on now, about yourself.
so does that mean I present with from my slides because I can't see what you are sharing?
No, I
Okay.
am presenting at the moment. Can you see in GoToWebinar? You should be able to see them now.
I can't find them.
Can you not see where? Can you see? Can you see Linda?
No.
So if you go onto the tab with GoToWebinar,
Mm-mm.
you should be able
Oh,
to.
maybe I just have to present without
You don't need to
my.
present. You don't need to present. I have shared the screen. You just need to go back into the meeting, and then you should be able to see them.
Would you please take me to the meeting because I can't see where I go back to the meeting, but I can see Linda.
You can't see me.
Yes, I
Can you
can
just,
see you.
You
can you
can
just,
see Linda.
no, she can't
I
see me,
can't
Annika.
see others. I'm only seeing Linda now.
Oh, you shouldn't be able to see the others because their cameras are switched off. You should only be able to see me and the slides. Can you see the slides?
The slides, no, I'm unable to see the slides.
Okay,
However,
well,
if I can proceed as you continue, maybe sharing the slides. Is that
if
okay?
you, yes, if
Yes.
you just work through the slides and tell Annika to go to the next slide when you finish talking about the one that she's got on. So she's got the one that's headed about the presenter on the screen at the moment.
Okay. Thank you so much, friends, and apologies for the technical glitch. I'm going to speak about bibliodiversity, specifically focusing on strategies for African scholars and publishers. And I'm sure you've seen details about the presenter. And then I want to move into the presentation agenda. Throughout the presentation, I'll look at the overview of bibliodiversity, which was well articulated by Mimi. And then I'll look at the rationale for bibliodiversity. I'll try to dive into the challenges to bibliodiversity in Africa, and then propose a few strategies for African scholars and publishers. And then I'll give key takeaways, and I'll finalize by calling you to action. The growth of scholarly communities is made possible by publishing outlets that allow researchers to access a diverse range of audiences. And that is what I strongly believe in. And I have a feeling that traditional growth in academic spaces has been mostly focused on international publication with established publishing houses which are majorly in English language. And the result has been a development of an elitist publishing industry that promotes a limited scope of works, and majority of these works are majorly in English, which is also limiting. And therefore, bibliodiversity came in as an alternative view of academic publishing and scholarly communication. Why do we have to advocate for bibliodiversity? I advance three major reasons. One, I consider culture and linguistic representation, which ensures knowledge representation across cultures and languages. And two, because it promotes intellectual pluralism, and it actually discourages monopolies of thought and encourages diverse perspectives in academia and publishing. And three, democratization of knowledge. The role of independent publishers, self-publishing, and open access initiatives encourage a choice. We no longer have to stick to one source of information. This comes with challenges. So there in Africa, coming from Africa, I've experienced most of the challenges that I'm going to share with you. And one of the challenges is market consolidation by big publishers. You all have seen that DK publishers are actually for books, and this is dominating the market. When you look at the journals, we have Elsevier, and now we also look at Amazon for the digital content. And then the second challenge is the digital disruption. Now, digital disruption, especially to the publishers, academics, or scholars, encourages piracy, which is a challenge. And then there are also algorithmic bias, especially with the search engines, which which do not promote a diverse of works, but rather produces or reveals only a few articles or publications. And three, there is economic and political barriers. You may also have had similar challenges from those coming outside Africa continent that includes funding. I've just had a colleague from Serbia talking about funding. There is also censorship and policies that restrict diverse publishing. These are very common on the continent. We also have a lot of illiteracy in all its forms still dominating the content. And so this limits intellectual output since a lot of information is not shared with the international platforms. What then could be the strategies to the African scholars and publishers? I'm of the view that the 5 strategies that I advanced would support in this regard. One, supporting independent publishers, and then to policy and advocacy is also key, especially whereby we need to push for initiatives that push for the role of government and international organizations in promoting bibliodiversity. And then 3, community and reader engagement is also key here. We need to encourage our readers to seek out diverse voices and support local bookstores. And also the role of libraries, book clubs, and literary festivals should be encouraged. And 4, digital tools and open access. There is a need to explore how open access publishing and digital platforms can democratize access to diverse works. And also the 5th one, there is a need to encourage the use of open access and Creative Commons licensing, and also the Helsinki initiative on multilingualism in scholarly communication. Now, with Helsinki initiative on multilingualism and scholarly communication, it supports the dissemination of research results for the full benefit of society. And it protects national infrastructure for publishing locally, especially emphasizing relevant research that impacts society, and also it's into promoting language diversity in research, which has been also alluded to by previous speakers. Colleagues, I have food for thought for you, and I have in form of questions. Question number one: do libraries and readers care where the bibliomaterials come from? And two, do libraries care about the credibility of the publishers? So if the libraries care about where the materials come from, do they actually care about the credibility of the publishers? Or they simply, we just heard from University of Washington libraries where they have a collection development policy. So maybe Mimi would be speaking to that. And also, what is the influence of politics on book buyers, educational departments? Do they dictate what kind of information materials are to be stocked or selected, and also or built for the academia to access and researchers? And how can libraries promote bibliodiversity amidst budget cuts? Colleagues, these questions uh, came to my mind when I was preparing this presentation, and coming from Africa, where we have issues of budget cuts amidst us, in most cases, where we have to, where they say there's a need to get more funding, they would, in most cases, recommend to go to the library budget. And yet, in the first place, in most cases, the libraries are given smaller budgets compared to other faculties, other colleges, other departments. And of course, sometimes because of the limited budgets, we take in materials regardless of evaluating the publishers, but because we want to meet the needs of our users and etc. And of course, politics in Africa is in another level. So sometimes you realize that there are certain information materials that from time to time are being asked to put off or to be censored. For instance, Animal Farm. It's believed that Animal Farm, written by an African scholar, has political stakes. So in most cases, they say, don't stock this kind of materials, and other so many books that I would refer to. So those do not call for the variety of materials in various forms, in various formats, and etc. So what are some of the takeaways? I would like to share that bibliodiversity is a tool for knowledge equity, and this has been alluded to by previous scholars. However, presenters, however, there is a need for combined efforts of policy changes and advocacy to ensure priority of voices. And this would start with today's webinar. I'm very grateful for this webinar, because we are going to continue advocating for bibliodiversity. And as I come to the end of the presentation, I am calling for action. Now that you have attended this webinar, I'm encouraging you to support diverse publishers, to train others who have not been part of this webinar, advocate for open access policies, and support library services, especially those in Africa. I thank you so much for your attention.
Well, huge thanks to you, Sarah. That was absolutely brilliant, and it was a brilliant encapsulation of what this is all about. I particularly like your food for thought questions, and I hope that we're going to be able to address some of those in the discussion which follows. So if you could all join the discussion now, Mimi, Alexandra and Sarah. Sarah, I don't know if we can see you again now. If we can't, we know. Oh, there you are. Very nice to see you again. So haven't got it. So this is a very quiet audience for some reason. We still haven't got any questions from the audience. But I'd like to start by asking Mimi to carry on with that point about trends she was making, and tell us more about what kind of trends you've been discovering, Mimi.
So yes, this I've been involved with the IFLA ARL group for a while, and this is one of the more interesting things. It's been an annual process that the committee does this internal survey to see what the leaders as part of the committee are engaged in and involved with in their various regions. Um, and the trend. It was interesting this year to see how many regions were being impacted by open science, and it was interesting because it seemed to come in higher in the survey as in having impact than AI, and AI has been at the top of the list for a little bit, although AI is certainly playing into this. But I do think that those bigger picture trends, the push towards open science and open research, which is much broader than open access. I mean, within the library community, we're accustomed to talking about open access, and open access certainly has a role within open science. But the push towards open science and the open sharing of research results. Um, we're at an inflection point in the U.S. right now, so it's hard to say where things are, where things are going to be going. But certainly the moves that we had been seeing towards federal funding, mandating open, being even more forceful in the move towards open publication has attracted a lot of attention. So from a library's perspective, we're looking at how we support that, and how and how we work, but how we manage working with traditional publishers and providing sort of non-traditional publishing support. So it's an interest. It's another level of the question of we've talked about the budget issue and the challenges to our budget, and the challenges to library budgets are not go well beyond what is which vendors do we work with, and much more into this question of what kinds of infrastructure are we supporting, how are we managing all of those resources. So and there's a lot of overlap between those trends. The sort of questions around infrastructure. The move to open science means that you need infrastructure to support open science. So the question of build out of infrastructure starts to play into it. I think
Thank you.
Sarah, you've been involved in this. I wonder if Sarah might comment a little bit on trends too, because Sarah has also been involved in collecting some of these and sort of thinking about the trends and how I can tell you that I think about those trends and how they impact the work that I'm doing. Personally, I'm sure that Sarah would say some of the same things.
I'd be very grateful to Sarah for carrying on with that, and I'd also like you to pick up on your point about authentication, Sarah, if you would. Do readers and librarians care about where information comes from? Because I thought that was a very important point as well. So please take over, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's quite an interesting question. Um, in as regards to bibliodiversity, and amidst the budget cuts, it's a dilemma. Sometimes, if they want to care so much about where materials are coming from, by authenticating, they may not be able to do that because they don't have the amount, the funds required to go for the quality stuff of material in the various forms and formats. So they decide to compromise so long as they are able to serve some section of their readers. And then in regard to open access, open science, as Mimi articulated, I still believe this is, yes, it's true. It's one of the trends, and it's still the priority. It emerged number one on the list. We are still struggling, especially in Africa. Yes, open access has been here for a while, but not open science because of certain reservations uh, relating to, again, funds. Some are using the donor monies, the donor funded monies, and then they don't want to go into open science. And some have a feeling that if they do put the information materials out in the public, they are going to be used without acknowledging the original authors. So the issues of common licensing also come into space. And you find that sometimes there are some people who are naturally, uh, they don't want to put their information into the international platform for everyone to have access to. And so, in a way, we regard them to be selfish or mean. And sometimes we'll say, no, this is mine. But on the other hand, we see that once you put out your raw data, your research data in the open space, then it's going to promote visibility. And we encourage you to be someone who is eager to be critiqued, because it's, everyone is seeing what you are putting out there, so the quality of research will improve as well. I can submit for now.
Thank you. We have got a question now. I will read it out to you. It's quite a long question. Clearly, more money in the system is helpful, but sadly, that's challenging. So far, nobody has mentioned rights retention to deposit versions in an institutional repository as another potential tool in the box to foster bibliodiversity in terms of publishing equity and financial sustainability. I'd be interested in the panel's thoughts on RR. Now, I actually think you did mention that, Alexandra. So could you start by answering that question?
Huh. When we are talking about sustainability in our situation in Serbia, it is not really easy, because in the libraries we are many enthusiastic people, many of us, and we are provide trainings and workshops for the all research community. Without any fund for our workshops and trainings, we are working organized by ourselves, learning by ourselves, and through some kind of unprofessional organization give a help to our scientific community. Our scientific community is good organized. I know this is parallel talk, parallel path with open science and open access. But our portal e-science make a very much differences in our country, because the scientifics recognize that their work can be transparent and visible and findable by every way, and connecting with sources in the internet, and searchable and collectible in the full text. And this is a point of open access publishing. If anything is in publishing open access, it is reachable through the system, through the internet, one click, etc. And making connections with colleagues and scientists abroad. And in that way, situation in Serbia can put together with a situation maybe in Africa, maybe in some another country abroad. Our scientists be more visible and be more influences with connection in open access in open access world, and sustainability is lying in stable foundation and stable education and stable system and stable publishing through the portals for open access publishing. I hope my colleagues that better than me in that point and in open access methods and everything make some good base to educate all audience and librarian for the other one side, as well as researchers to the other side, to make connections, a community of open science community.
Thank you. Mimi, does IFLA have a stance on rights retention? Does it have a sort of official view on rights retention?
IFLA supports rights retention generally, and I am not the expert here, but I believe they do offer some IFLA likes to produce sort of guidelines and standards along these lines, and I believe that they have made recommendations. I know that the IFLA has a committee, Copyright and Other Legal Matters, that is very active in the area of sort of less active in rights retention, but very active in terms of copyright and author, copyright, the author rights kinds of roles. And now I apologize because I'm not completely up on everything that they're doing, but I strongly recommend the work that the Copyright and Other Legal Matters group has at IFLA has undertaken. They've been a really big advocate and have been active in a number of different within international organizations. To my mind, the rights retention question has gotten the rights retention has a strong connection with open access, and as we have seen the push towards open research and open science, and there's a real tension on the language here, right? The whether it's sort of open research. It's not just STEM fields that are impacted by this, the push towards open science, although that it tends to be where the big impact is. But as there has been more and more of an emphasis on data and the sort of the data products and data reuse, and that aspect of openness and of having materials be accessible for things like AI, you're starting to see more and more move towards AI and the use of academic scholarly communications as a training base for AI, as a way to sort of get to some of those accuracy questions. The rights retention piece tends to get caught up in the sort of more traditional concerns around open access. I think I think rights retention is important. I think it's something that we still push to make sure that authors are aware of and sort of understand the way that they work and the impact. But the question of how the material is made available becomes even a bigger question than the question of the rights retention and rights management. That's not
I know it's a very complicated question.
It is complicated.
Now, this actually was a question for you, but I think we'll give you a bit of a rest after that. And thank you very much again. So, Sarah, besides country and regional differences, do you see different nuances in different types of discipline? I mean, for example, do you think humanities is suffering at the expense of sciences? Given that many of the things that you have all described are actually humanities related, preserving cultures, preserving languages, those are humanities related things. But we see more and more that where funds are in scarce supply, that universities, libraries, academics are focusing on sciences rather than humanities. So do you think there's an issue there?
I think it's yes. My response to that would be yes. Like right now, there is a tendency in Uganda, for instance, a focus on the sciences than the humanities. So everyone is pushing for the sciences because that is the top priority for the state, the government. They are into sciences. So you realize that kind of the arts have been marginalized, and so you cannot actually think of bibliodiversity as it relates to the humanities. We all go for the sciences, and that is where it is a serious issue. And of course, we forget that they complement each other, much as they consider as the STEM as a priority, but the STEM cannot exist without the humanities supporting.
Thank you. That actually chimes with a piece of work that Annika and I have been doing recently on the increasing focus on interdisciplinarity across the world in university courses. And Alexandra,
Can I jump in on that too?
yes, of
Because I will
course.
say on my campus there is a huge push around a push for research and sort of increasing research and sort of looking at the ways that we can increase research funding and research projects on what it's the Danforth campus, as we call it. We have a separate campus for our medical school, and the med school is the medical school is frankly very successful in bringing has been very successful in bringing in research funding, and there's this people see the disparity. So the emphasis and where I'm feeling the pressure is to be able to support research. There is an interest in supporting research writ large, and really trying to get at that disparity between the way research and medical research in particular has been funded and supported, and the way that research writ large, humanities, but also that also getting at that interdisciplinarity question. We're seeing much more integration between our art, like our art and architecture school, and their design programs are working much more closely with our engineering school and trying to look at the ways that engineering are taking on some of these global challenges. So that interdisciplinarity is becoming a big thing. My university is in the process of opening. We're about a year away from opening the new School of Public Health that is trying to take some of that strength that we have in the area of medicine, and connect with our School of Social Work, connect that with the law school to as we try to address some of these issues around some of these bigger picture societal issues with health. And so again, that push to interdisciplinarity is there, and that is definitely having an impact on the way we think about research.
Thank you very much indeed. That's really interesting. So, Alexandra, I was going to ask you, for a small country, Serbia seems to be doing an awful lot in this area. Do you think that's because the cultural diversity is so great in Serbia?
Not so great covered, because I mentioned language problems, and we make a solution for language problems to publish our journals on English, perhaps. Because it is easy maybe for science, but I back to the point of art and humanities. In art and humanities, it is very interesting to have articles or proceedings papers in Serbian, and we have many minorities in Serbia, Hungarian or on Ukraine minority, and they're writing on their own language. It is very important through the bibliodiversity to save this part of culture and to save this as our cultural heritage and publish scientific works in their own languages. Also, to save Serbian language and Cyrillic script, we make some solution that we have two languages journals, Serbian and English. I am editor, co-editor of one of the journals about digital humanities in Serbia. My institution is a publisher. We publish in open journal system, but we have papers, articles in Serbian languages and in parallel in English language. It is one way to be good for a local community and to be good to international visibility. It is about bibliodiversity in Serbia. In the so-called small languages has problems everywhere in that way. To have to be in an opportunity to have to publish in English. To be visible, but some things are interesting only for our region. Some things from maybe language or history on everything is totally local type subjects.
Thank you. And this is a knotty question. I'm going to start with Mimi, but Sarah and Alexandra might have even more to say about it. Now, we do know that researchers in many countries, and I mean, we've come across this, Annika and I have come across this in India and China and Southeast Asian countries as well as European countries, that researchers are often required by their universities to get the university's credit rating up by publishing in certain journals, and some of them have a hierarchy of journals to publish in. So how do you overcome that to promote diversity? Mimi.
Yeah, it is a knotty problem, and I actually would love to hear Sarah and Alexandra comment on what kinds of restrictions they're seeing on their own campuses and within their own organizations, because my organization has tried to be you know has not been particularly restrictive in that regard. I mean, I think what I am seeing is this pressure and emphasis on research and wanting to drive the amount of research and at some level the research funding that is coming to the particularly to the schools outside of the School of Medicine. But I'm seeing that less than the demands for publication. The interesting dynamic that I am seeing, and I've had this conversation even at the dean level, is that that folks are seeing the move to open science, open research, the benefits of open access publication, and things like preprint servers, and the sort of new and emerging modes of publishing. But there's still, especially on that whole tenure and promotion track, there's still a lot of focus on the sort of journal quality and quality of journal for assessment and tenure and promotion. And I've actually had a conversation where where my faculty member was advocating for people publishing things, getting things into repositories, but still wanting to be able to look to that sort of journal quality as a way to assess work product. And there's a real tension there, I think, from my perspective. And it's certainly a question that gets at the it certainly is driving that budget question that we've been talking about from the beginning, right? If we're trying to move to using library budgets to support more open access, and at the same time are being asked to continually maintain those sort of access to quality traditional methods of funding and accessing quality journals, we've got a real tension there. So I haven't really got at your question of how you get away from the I haven't got a solution to how you get away from it, other than the fact that certainly we are having conversations around how you assess the use of some of these publications, and the move away from traditional publications is beginning to take hold. You know, I have been involved in conversations around how you think about someone who has published and made accessible a highly valuable data set that is, that is something, that is not just a traditional publication. So it's starting to make headway, but I'm certain all I can do is sort of have conversations about the inherent tension between thinking about how we change publishing and how we move forward.
Thank you. It's kind of looking at authentication from the other end of the telescope, isn't it? So, Sarah, are there pressures on your academics to publish in certain places?
I think the situation is not so different from what Mimi described. Like in the last 2 years, what the university did in order to motivate academics, they tried to, I think they went to Web of Science, and I can't remember which other, for the number of publications in the high impact journals. So
Exactly.
they were recognized, something like that. So now it's kind of discouraging at some people were publishing all over, because you have to be careful about, if you wanted to publish, which kind of journals or spaces that will be actually valued by the university in terms of the impact. And of course, even the funders, if the requirement, one of the requirement at the initial stages is to have a publication out of that. So they also dictate the terms are dictated. So you have to think twice. But again, at the same time, those high impact something, they also have their conditions, that they are forced back, that there are delays, and they may not also take into consideration the multi languages.
That's the publication date, yes. Um,
So it's still tricky, but the academics are trying. We are trying, but and also the issue sometimes these spaces also require a lot of money, which money we don't have. They can say, okay, to publish in such a high impact factor something or database, then you need to pay $3,000, and the faculty may not have the $3,000. So that also limits. And of course, not our people will even benefit. Sometimes they may not even know. So people would even feel comfortable to publish in the local journals, but they are not going to be valued anyway. So it's like you are wasting your efforts. So we don't even have to think of the diversity of languages, especially the local languages, whereby the content would impact the communities where researches took place.
Thank you very much for that. Alexandra, are your researchers constrained to publish in high impact journals, or do they make their own choice? You're muted, Alexandra. You're muted.
Many of our researchers publish in high quality journals. We have some extraordinary researchers in Serbia. We have some our journals in Web of Science and Science Citation Index, and we are very proud about it. But like Sarah mentioned, when you invite them to publish in your journal, open access journal, they always ask, which is category, which is impact of your journal. Oh, I need some better. I need a M24. I need a M21, and etc. to publish my work. we make a huge effort as librarians. We have now support of Ministry of Science to educate young researchers and PhD candidates to publish in open access journals and to publish in visible abroad visible journals and educate them with everything about scientific publishing and be some kind of guide through the process of first time they publish their works before they have a PhD dissertation, etc. Our science I mentioned is now totally visible, and the impact factors of researchers are visible. They Hirsch indexes, etc. And it is very important for them to everything be correct, but many times researchers decide to publish in a well-known journal, not open access, but we are hoping that we are in the good path, in the good road to make to invite them and involve them in our open access community and open access publishing.
Thank you very much. Well, you've all opened up on the subject hugely and given us much more insight into it. So huge thanks for that. I'm going to ask one last question because it is a very complex area and you're all battling on several fronts. Do you think this is going to work? I'll start with Mimi. Is this going to work? Will you manage to preserve bibliodiversity in the face of all the budget cuts and all the other hurdles that you've identified? Do you think gradually you're fighting a winning battle?
I think we will have. I mean, it's really a question of how you define winning. I do think we have been and will continue to diversify what we value as research output, what what it is that we deem to be worthy of preservation, and how we how we assess. I think the move towards open science and and open research broadly is progress is slow, but it's there, and I think that that level of diversity is happening. I think the multi-language question is a little bit more challenging, and sort of how we manage to support different languages is very challenging, but I, especially as we're seeing more opportunities, again, this comes, the AI comes up again, but as we're seeing more opportunities for support for translation, and sort of ways to think about dual publication, I think that will happen. So yes, I do think we will see increased diversity in the scholarly, in the types of publication in the scholarly communication, in this scholarly communication realm. But I don't think it's ever going to be easy, and I don't think there's and I don't think there's a clear definition for, I think we will have to be thoughtful about what it means to be successful to make that.
Thank you. Sarah, you were nodding then.
I was absolutely agreeing to what she was saying. I think I'm also of the same opinion that yes, we are trying, but we are still slow. And so if you are not looking at quantities in which bibliodiversity exists, yes, we shall be somewhere. But of course, amid its challenges.
Thank you. And Alexandra?
I think it is a long way for us in Serbia, but we are going on. And last year we make some first year of the project of Ministry of Science that we control. I mentioned in my presentation, we control metadata in the conference proceedings and in the scientific monographs. The Ministry of Science made a free call to finance monograph publications to be in open access. Last year we have 150 publications like that, financed by Ministry of Science. Step by step, I think it will be. I hope it will be better, and I hope that way of open access. It is be successful to the end in bibliodiversity in whole our situation.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for a really stimulating discussion and 3 brilliant presentations. Thank you so much for keeping to the time so that we had plenty of time for discussion. And we are certainly, I'm sure, all the people who listen to this, watch this, which will be a lot more than the people who are here at the moment, will follow the work that you're doing with huge interest. So very many thanks again from De Gruyter and from me and Annika. If you wouldn't mind just waiting a couple of seconds, I think Lavinia would like to say something before everybody goes.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Let me just quickly share my last slide for the day. Okay, all right. Thank you so much to our panelists today. Insights were magnificent, and thank you, Linda and Nika, for your moderation today. Thank you for everyone for joining, and I hope you got much of this session. We will send the presentations and the recording to all registrants next week. There are 3 more exciting sessions coming up this year. Our next session in June will examine the latest in the OA movement, and I hope many of you will join us for that. Later in the year, we will shed light on the latest developments in AI, and then we will close the year with a session that will explore how libraries are bridging gaps between campus and local communities. I hope many of you will join some of these webinars with us. And for now, thank you and have a wonderful afternoon and evening. Thanks.
Thank you again, and thank you, Lavinia, for staying up late, and thank you, Mimi, for getting up early.
Okay.
So thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.